Hi, it's Kimberly Rob Baker with thislittle.brand.com, and today I've got something practical for you. I get a lot of questions about what tense should the verbs on my resume be in, and is it first person, is it third person? And people get confused. I saw an article on, I don't want to say it was a big economic newspaper, one that you know and that a lot of people get on their doorstep every day or in their inbox every day. And they actually had an article that talked about whether your resume should be in first person or third person. And they weren't talking about the verbs. They were actually talking about using pronouns. And yet the word pronoun was never used in the article. And I couldn't believe that this made it past the editors at that established organization. So let's clear up some facts about tenses and pronouns in the resume. Traditionally, there are no personal pronouns used in the resume. In fact, no pronouns at all. So I did this, we did that, he did that, she did that is frowned upon. So that's the traditional approach. I think it's fairly cool to stick with that for a resume, except sometimes I do like to make it personal by having a quote. Like I'll have some quotes or some business philosophies sometimes. And then in that quote you can say, I blah, 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 blah. And you can see some examples of this in my portfolio at thislittlebRand.com/portfolio. And that personalizes it, but it still tells the reader, hey, I know how to write a resume. I know there aren't any pronouns in here. That may change. Everything's always evolving. But for me, for the atmosphere right now, I think that is the way to go. And then LinkedIn is a platform where you can get personal use pronouns, everything. Now, that has nothing to do with how you're conjugating your verbs because it is traditional. It's actually grammatically correct to conjugate it in the first person because you're presumably writing your own resume. And it's called a telegraphic style, somewhat like Robert takes $1,000 from bank. So this is not a whole sentence, right? A Robert took $100,000 from the bank is a whole sentence. But Robert takes thousands of dollars from bank is not exactly a whole sentence. But that's called telegraphic writing, what we do in newspaper headlines. And that's the style when you're writing about yourself in a resume. So you really just take the pronouns out. I am an executive who has the ability to zoom in at the level of the weeds and up at 30,000 degrees. 30,000 feet. I can do both of those things. So that would be, executive with ability to roll up sleeves and get in the weeds, as well as get the big picture from 30,000 feet is how that would look. No personal pronoun, just take the pronoun out. And what often happens, and this is usually the profile at the top of the resume where this issue comes up. Often people want to write it in third person. And it gets really weird because sometimes when you're talking about yourself, you do write in third person, like, I am an executive who sees. So she sees, the executive sees, right? But the word I has to fit in there. So if it was, I execute change management rollouts, or, I'm kind of making stuff up. I execute change management operations with great EQ, emotional intelligence. So execute rollouts with emotional intelligence would be the sentence, not executes. Executes would be the third person. So the way to tell how to do it is just to stick the I in there and see if it still makes sense, and then take the I back out. Take the pronoun back out. It is very common to write the top part of the resume in third person, though resume writers often will be up in arms about this. It's very common to do, and it's so common, especially in certain industries like finance. I would say if you have a preference for having the third person verbs there, that's fine. Just write it as, and it's the same thing. Write the sentences as if she or he, you're writing about yourself in the third person, and then take those pronouns out to see if you're conjugating the verbs correctly. So that would be, instead of execute rollout, which would be first person, I execute a rollout, it would be like she executes a rollout. So executes rollouts. I hope that makes sense. In the rest of the resume, you're dealing with time issues. So as you introduce if you have a current role, as you introduce it, you may use a sentence that's in past tense, like to uh, promoted to implement a new training program. That's past tense. That's how you got the role. It's some context. But everything else in describing the role, the job description, should be present tense because it's your current job. I have this level of accountability. I do this. I have these people working with me. I partner with vendors. That's it. And of course, no personal pronouns. So partner with vendors, hold accountability for $500,000 budget. So first person, and definitely first person in these job roles. Don't use third person in past the profile if you've made the decision to use third person at all. So current role should be mostly present tense. All accomplishments, even for your current role, are past tense because you're saying, I did this, it's done. If something is in process, you can say something in the past like set stage for or laid out strategy for XYZ thing, and then you can say still in process or expected completion and give a date. But all of your accomplishments should be in past tense, and they should start with the same part of speech, which is usually a past tense verb. Now, after your first job role, everything gets a lot easier. It's all past tense. All the introductions, everything past tense. So I'll make a little chart, I think, and throw up here because it's hard to keep all in your head. But yeah, resume tenses can be confusing. I hope that this cleared some of the fog for you.
So to review this one more time, overall resume grammar rules: no personal pronouns, write in the first person, and use telegraphic writing, so no pronouns, minimal articles, kind of like newspaper headlines. Woman gets job. Exceptions to those general rules: if you feel like writing your profile in third person, that's fine. Just be consistent and do it only in the top profile. Use callouts or italics to add personal statements, including personal pronouns. So I do it like this. This was the person's title at the top of his resume and a quote about how he works. So that personalized the resume, made it more human, but still kind of said, okay, I know that I'm using a personal pronoun right now and I'm sort of breaking the fourth wall, as they say in acting, but not going to do that the rest of the resume. I know how to write a resume as well. For the current role, that's where tenses get really wonky. So you can use a past tense in the introductory statement to just explain how you got there. And after that, keep it to present tense. If you don't like switching back and forth, you can avoid using verbs. That's also a possibility. Here it's a mix. He was recruited, etc. And then everything else here. Hold, develop, is lead, is present tense. And lead, the verb, is pronounced lead. If you want to spell lead, it's L-E-D. This is the biggest, most common typo. Lead is L-E-D, not L-E-A-D if you're talking about the verb. And of course, always, even the present tense or present role, your accomplishments are in past tense, as you see an example here. In past roles, it gets easy after you get past your current role because everything is in past tense. Keep it in first person, no personal pronouns. All the global rules apply. But you're made in the shade tense-wise once you get to your past roles.